Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Steve Jameson. I'm the library director here at Covenant Seminary, and today we're going to be talking about the software Zotero. Zotero is a software tool that helps you build citations and bibliographies. It tracks your research and then helps you insert citations and bibliographies in your work as you write. So to talk about what we're going to go over today, we're first going to talk about installing and setting up Zotero, some of the settings that you'll want to configure on a fresh install to make the best use of the software. We'll talk about tracking and managing your sources in Zotero, including how you can add books, articles, and other items to your Zotero library as you do your research. And then we'll talk about using Zotero as you write to add citations and your bibliography to your paper. So this is going to be pretty much all demos. So I'm just going to quit out of PowerPoint at this point and get to my web browser. So to start with installation, we go to zotero.org. And this is where we can get the Zotero app. So we start with the download here, and there's a couple things that you'll need to install. So one, you'll need the Zotero application. So it should detect whether you're on a Mac or Windows and give you that option to download the appropriate version. So you just download that, install that application program. That's the main app that will track your library, all the things that you may want to cite, the things you found in your research, and keep that organized for you. You'll also want to install the Zotero connector. This is a browser plugin that allows you to save items to your Zotero library as you do your research. So I'm using Firefox here, so it gives me the option to install the Firefox connector, but it also works for other browsers. I will note for those of you who prefer to use Safari on your Mac, since Safari 13, Safari 14 is the latest version, Apple has been switching up how it handles web browser extensions, and the Zotero team, it's a nonprofit organization, so they're working on getting compatibility, but it's taking them some time to do that. So you can read more about that here if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details. They do have a beta version of the Zotero app with a Safari plugin. Of course, you always got to be careful with beta software. It may have bugs or other issues that may prevent it from working fully. So if you are on a Mac, you may want to choose to use Firefox or Chrome as you do your research, or you can use that beta version of the Zotero app and connector for now. And hopefully they'll get that all sorted out soon enough. So you've got your app, you have your connector. The last thing you want to do while you're here on the website is to register for a Zotero account. So right up here, you can see register. You want to do this because this will give you free 300 megabytes of storage for your Zotero library. And that'll allow you to back up and sync your Zotero library to the cloud. It's always good to have a backup of things, to have a good backup strategy for your work. And so having that free Zotero account allowing you to sync your library into the cloud is a great way to keep all that hard work backed up and safe from whatever might happen to your computer. Also, if you are a user who works with multiple computers, maybe you have one at home, one at the office, using that Zotero account to sync allows you to keep your Zotero library in sync between multiple computers. So it's really handy, and again, that's free, and that gives you up to 300 megabytes of storage for your Zotero library. You can pay to have more. If you're storing tons and tons of PDFs in there and making a lot of use of it, you can pay for an upgrade to that, but 300 megabytes can go pretty far. Okay, so I already have a Zotero account. I've already downloaded the app and installed the connector into my browser. So I'm gonna go into the Zotero app right now. So I've used Zotero for a little while, so I have stuff in my library. When you first open your Zotero, it should be pretty much completely blank. They may have like a getting started guide saved in there for you, but otherwise you'll see a fairly blank screen. But before we really get into using this, we want to do some setting up here. So we'll go to the Zotero preferences, and that may look a little bit different on Windows where you go to access the preferences. But it's in one of the menus there, I forget which one. So the first thing we're gonna look at is the sync tab here. So I have that account, so I'm already signed into my account, but on a fresh install, this would give you the option to sign into your account. And that'll connect your Zotero app to your Zotero account so that it can sync your library. And I can see I have it set to sync automatically and sync the full text content, any PDFs I've added to my Zotero library. The next thing I want to do is go over to the Cite tab. And there's two sections here, styles and word processors. We'll start with styles. So these are the different citation styles that are installed on Zotero. There will be a initial set that Zotero will come with. What you want to make sure is that you have the citation style that you're going to use. So for Covenant, that would be either Chicago Manual of Style 17th, which is what Turabian is based off of, or there actually is a separate Turabian version. I believe one difference between the two is that this Turabian version, when you cite things multiple times, it will use IBID, that abbreviation to say, hey, it's the same thing I just cited earlier. That is falling out of favor in terms of in favor of using shortened citations with the author's name, maybe the title. So if you prefer that format, you want to go with the Chicago Manual Style 17th edition. And you want the full note version. So you can see a couple different options. There's author date, full note, and note. You want the full note version. That'll give you the full footnote on your first citation. Author date is in-text citation, which is not what we use at Covenant, and note is all shortened notes all the time. So you want the full note citation there. If you're doing a counseling paper, of course, you may be using the APA style. And so you want to make sure that you have the APA 7th edition style there if you're going to be using that for a counseling paper. So you want to make sure those are there. Any of the other ones, if you don't need these, you can just delete them, clean it up a little bit. And then if any of these are missing, this link down here to get additional styles will open up their style search, and you can search for whichever one you want and add that to your style library. So once you have the styles that you need, you'll want to hop over to word processors. So this installs the integration with your word processor so that you can use Zotero as you write. So it supports Microsoft Word and LibreOffice, open source word processor. So those are the two things it works natively with, and you just click the button. So I've already got it installed in Microsoft Word, so it gives me the option to reinstall. Sometimes if you are having trouble with the integration with your word processor, reinstalling it will fix it. So I've got a couple questions here. We've got Turabian 9th, a question about that. So let me go back over here. So that was, I went to additional styles here, Turabian. So here we have the two Turabians they have are Turabian 8th, full note, and Turabian 9th, author date. So Turabian 9th edition is the latest version of Turabian. So it looks like they have just not gotten around to updating the Turabian full note style to the 9th edition. So for our work, we would want to use the full note form rather than the author date. We're not using author, date, and text citation. We're using the full note, footnote, bibliography style of Turabian. So if you were going with Turabian, you want to go this one. Again, since this inserts the IBIDs, I would recommend using the Chicago style instead. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that was helpful, Steve. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Okay, so once we get our plugin installed in our word processor, we are all set up and ready to go. We've got our Zotero synced with the cloud. We've got our citation styles available to us, and we have everything installed: app, browser plugin, word processor plugin. So we can close this right now, and then we can start to do some research. So when you install that Zotero connector for your browser, it'll add a toolbar button to your browser. Of course, this may look different in Chrome or versus Safari versus Firefox like I'm using here, but it should look like this. It may look like a Z at first. You may have to click it one time to get the plugin to activate, depending on your browser security settings. But otherwise, it'll be an icon hanging out in your browser bar, and the image will change based on what you are looking at in your web browser. So in this case, since I'm looking at a web page, Zotero is not detecting that this is a journal article or a record for a book or for anything. So it's giving me the web page icon, indicating that if I click that button, it's going to save a record for this web page. I don't particularly want that. I want to go find something I really want to cite. So let me go back to the library homepage and find some library resources. So I'm just going to search in our catalog for a book. So I'm going to pull up Far as the Curse is Found by Michael Williams. And you can see that my Zotero button has changed now. Now it looks like a book. And that's indicating that it recognizes that this is a library catalog and that I'm looking at a record for a book. And so if I save this, it's going to save a book. So to save this to my Zotero library, all I have to do is click the icon. It's going to give me the option of where to save that to. By default, it'll save to whichever folder you have highlighted in your Zotero library, or if you have your whole library selected, it'll save it in there. But you can change that as you save it. It's gone now because it's already saved. So if I go back to Zotero, you can see it brought in the record for that book. So it imported all the information about the book right there into Zotero. Now, this is the part where I have to emphasize that ultimately your citations that Zotero produces will only be as good as the data you give it in your library. If you give it bad data, or if it imports bad data, then you're going to get bad citations out. So whenever you import something into Zotero, it's a good idea just to take a quick look to make sure that everything landed in the right place, that it got all the information that you typically would need about an item to produce a citation, and just double check to make sure that all the information looks correct. So on this one, for example, it looks good. We got the title. It did recognize that it's a book. We got the title. We don't have to worry about the capitalization. Zotero will sort that out when we cite that. Got the author. Got the place, the publisher, date, all that information. Now the place of publication. So I know that Turabian likes to use standard postal abbreviations for states. So that's an edit I'm going to have to make here. So the catalog just said Phillipsburg, New Jersey, but I'm going to want to change that to NJ. Because Zotero is just going to stick that into my citation. And if I need postal abbreviations, then I need to make sure that that's in there in my Zotero library ready to go. And everything else looks good here. So I think we're all set with this example. So let's go find another one. So I'm going to find a biblical commentary. I'm going to look up Wenham's commentary on Genesis and the Word Biblical Commentary series. turn that up. Here it is. So once again, Zotero recognized that it's a book. We'll click to import that into my library. It's pulling in the book record. It found the table of contents note on the record, and it's pulling that in to my Zotero library. And there it is. So if it does find a table of contents note on there, it'll create a sub item under the book. Sometimes it can be nice to have that sort of thing. If you have your own notes that you want to add, you can add those as well. You can add a new child note to an item and keep whatever notes about an item you would like. Now let's check to see what we have here in terms of making sure everything is correct. The book, Genesis, Gordon J. Wenham. It's in the Word Biblical Commentary series. That's great. So series number, we don't really need that, so we can delete that. That will just kind of make my citation look a little messy. So we'll clean that up. We've got 2 places here, so we only really need the first. So we can get rid of the Dallas, we'll just leave the Waco. And then you can see here it put number of pages 2. This is actually the volume count. So we're going to do that, move that, and it is 2 volumes. And so now just a little bit of cleanup. We do have that postal abbreviation there, so that all looks good, and we're good to go on that one. So now I've got a couple books in here. Let's go find a journal article and see what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to the library homepage, go to research databases, and we'll go to our good friend, the Atla Religion database. And let's pull up article by Dr. Collins. Published in Presbyterion a number of years ago. So we'll pull up that article. So you'll notice on this screen, the Zotero icon is a folder, and you'll see that whenever you're on a search results screen, when there could be multiple things. There's only one here, but there could be multiple ones. And so if you click that, that'll actually allow you to save multiple items from that screen. But I'm going to go into this record here, and now it has the article icon there. So we'll click that. So it's saving to my demo folder. It's grabbing the article data, and it's even downloading the available PDF right into my Zotero library. So we go there. You can see that's now attached. So I actually have the full PDF of that article stored in Zotero. So this is another way that Zotero can really help you, rather than have a bunch of folders sitting on your hard drive full of the articles, just haphazardly thrown in, or trying to manually sort them. This can help keep your research organized, because of course you can search within your Zotero library to find that one article that you wanted to read right now or reference in your paper, and it's going to turn it up right there. So let's double check to make sure the information looks good here. So we got journal article, we have the title came in, author name. I'm just going to add a period after that initial C there to clean that up. This all looks good for the journal. The only other thing I might want to fix is the short title. So if I reference this article multiple times on subsequent references, rather than using the full title, it will use the short title. So of course, since a colon is the indicator of the transition between the main title and the subtitle, it just chops off everything after the first first colon. But in this case, it's a verse reference, which I actually want in here. So I'm just going to put that back in to clean up that short title so that makes sense when it uses that in my paper. Opened up something there. I guess I clicked that link. So you can quickly, view online, go back to that online record if you do need to double check some information. or I can view the PDF that it has downloaded. That'll open up in your default PDF reader, whether that's Preview on a Mac, or if you have Adobe Reader on your computer set as your default. And then once you're in here, you can use any of the markup tools or note-taking tools that your PDF reader provides. So Preview, I like it, has some good tools for that. The free version of Adobe Reader has some good tools as well. So I can, for example, if I want to highlight something, I can put in those highlights. If I want to add a note or some text or what have you, I can do all that. I can underline whatever your PDF reader will allow you to do. So let's see, what is this one? There's a note. So I can put a note in there. This is important. Put that wherever I want. And then this will just save into my Zotero library and get synced up to the cloud. So when I come back later and I want to pick up where I left off, all my notes should be there. So let's pull in one more item from the Atla Religion database. This time I'm going to grab a essay that's published in a book. So here we go. So see, this is a publication type essay that was published in a book. So this is just a chapter, just an individual piece of this book, one little section. And I can save that in there. So that's saving to my library now. So it's going to save the record. It's not going to find any full text, of course. Let's save something. That's interesting. Let's take a look. What did it save? Oh, that's the last article I saw. So that's a little bit of a mistake. I'm not sure why it did that. I do not want that attachment there because that's not the right thing. So we'll clean that up. Then you can see it imports as a book section. So that's great. We got the title. We have some authors here, which these are all the authors. There's the book title. Place Grand Rapids. So you want to add the state there, Michigan. We did not get the publisher. So let's see who published this. This was Baker Academic. 2013 is right. Got the page numbers. Looks like everything else is good. The only other thing is might want to add the editors of the book. So I know that's useful when I'm citing something like this. So let me pull up, grab the record for the book here. Or I can, the other thing I could do is I could search the Covenant catalog to see if we have this book. Here we go. I actually have it as an ebook. So that's cool. So here's the editors, Christopher M. Hayes and Christopher B. Ansberry. So we're gonna have a little bit of duplication because Ansberry was also the author of that essay. So let me grab these two here. Go to Zotero, and I'm just going to add a new person here. Add, and I'm going to select an editor here. I can do, just paste in the full name, convert it to the two fields so you can toggle back and forth between having just one field for the full name or having two fields for last name and first name. Zotero tries to be pretty intelligent about guessing what part of what name is which. Go back here and grab this other one. So we got another editor. Pop that in as last name, comma, first name, and there we go. So now I've got all the information about this person. And if I want to, maybe I want to have a record for the whole book in case I need to cite the whole thing. So I can go ahead and pull that into my Zotero library as well. So there's that one. So we got just the one editor in this case. Let's see, I should still have on my clipboard. Yep. So add the other editor. We got the title, Grand Rapids MI. We can trim down the publisher name here a bit, clean that up. And looks like we're good otherwise. Okay, one more thing to pull into my library and then we'll start citing some things. One more example. So I'm going to go to a eJournal article that I had found earlier, the International Bulletin of Missionary Research by Dr. Nelson Jennings, former Covenant prof. So again, this is on the Sage Journals website. Zotero knows about all the major academic journal websites, so it recognizes where to find all the information. And this is something that's part of the library's eJournal subscription, so we do have access. It is unlocked. And so when I add that to my library, it's going to go ahead and pull in all that information. It's going to download the PDF again, and we should be good to go. So we'll just, again, check all the information. Sure, everything looks good. The only thing I might fix here is the issue date here. So it came in as July 1st, 2014. That looks suspiciously exact. And it's getting that from the first published date here. But if I look at, if I go ahead and open the actual item, I might notice that, oh, the issue date is just July 2014. So I can go ahead and delete that day. Close that out. Okay. So are there any other questions at this point? So I've run through and pulled in several items into my Zotero library, made sure to clean up the information so that I get good citations at the end, but it's done a lot of that work for me of tracking what I've read and pulling that information in so that I don't have to jot that down myself. So now that we have some things to cite, let's do some citation. So let me go to my word processor document. Don't mind the fake Latin here. This is just some filler text, so we don't have to worry about what my paper actually says, because that's not the point of this session. But I have my paper here and I need to do some citing. So when I installed the Zotero connector, hold on, one more question here. When I import from library catalog, not all authors' info are correct. Sometimes editor is listed as author without the book in hand. How do I know they are correct? So that's a good question. So that's right. So again, that's highlights the point of you have to double check your information. Now, if you don't have the item in hand, I'm not sure how you would necessarily figure that out. Of course, if you don't have the item in hand, you won't necessarily be citing it, I suppose. But there may be other places that you can look. If it's a book, maybe you go to look at a Google Books preview or the Amazon preview, and you can take a look at the title page to see who's listed as author, who's listed as editor. Those kind of previews are all super handy. I use them all the time as a librarian just to get information about books. So that would be one way. But that is a good point that you do need to pay attention to that information. And sometimes, yeah, the author will get pulled into Zotero or the editor will get pulled in as an author, and you have to change that. But yeah, just like looking through the item or looking at a preview of the item should help clarify who is who. So when we're in the word processor, when I installed the Microsoft Word plugin, it added this menu to the Word ribbon, the Zotero menu there. And this has all my Zotero functions. And I'm going to go through each of these, touching on them. Starting with when I start a new document, probably the first thing I want to do is hit Document Preferences. And this is going to set up how Zotero is going to interact with this document, including which citation style I'm going to use. So if I want to use Chicago Manual of Style 17th full note, I can select that here. It's also allows me to set up whether I'm using footnotes or endnotes. Most likely you're going to be using footnotes, how it's storing citation. Most of those you can just leave as is. The only option I'll really talk about here is for any of our doctor of ministry students who are writing their dissertation. If you have a ton of citations in your document, whenever you do anything with Zotero, it's going to update everything in your document. So if you have hundreds of citations, it may take a while and it may get a little bogged down. And so you can uncheck this box to automatically update citations. That way it's just going to insert the data and you can move on. But it's not going to update any, it's not going to grab the latest info from your Zotero library to update your citations. Most of the time, if you're just writing a small paper for a class, if you have a dozen, 20, 50 citations, whatever it is, you can just leave that on. You're not going to have any problem. But I have seen instances where someone has, their computer's just getting bogged down by the sheer number of updates. So you can uncheck that and just manually refresh at any time. But generally, leave that on if you can. So we got that set up. So we've set our style, and now we can set our first citation. So we'll just come in at the end of the sentence here, and we use the Add Edit Citation button. So that's going to insert a footnote for me, and then it's going to bring up my Zotero search bar, and I can search for one of the things I cited. So if we pull up far as the curse is found there, I can bring that in. So I just, start typing author, title, any information I have, and it's going to search my library to find matching things, and I can hit return to select. Now, I'll often want to include a page number that I'm citing, so then I can click what just went in there and choose page or enter the page. So if I'm citing page 35, I can enter that, hit return, and now it's added that to my citation. And I can add additional ones if I'm citing multiple things in the footnote, but usually you're just citing one thing at a time. So I'll just hit return, and that'll insert my citation. So I'll scroll down to the bottom, and there we go. I've got my citation in there, all formatted according to Chicago to review. So let's add another one. So let's add something different now. So we'll go to the next sentence here. Add in something from Collins. And choose a page number, insert that. And there we go. So I have a question here about the formatting. So we need to add the indents for the first line of citations. So yes, so indentation or spacing, you may have to adjust that to fit your style. So here at Covenant, we don't enforce the first line indent on footnotes. We're perfectly happy in the library when we deal with dissertations if the footnotes are all flush left. We do want this line of blank space between your footnotes. So you may have to set up that formatting on your own. Zotero is just going to get all the data in here. for you in far as formatting what your footnote looks like, but you're kind of some of that other style of spacing and indent you may have to handle on your own. But you can take care of that pretty easily at the end. You can just kind of select down in your footnotes, hit your Control or Command A to do a select all, and then do your format if you're not using the style feature of your word processor. So let me add in another reference here to Williams. So we'll go back to that first one, choose another page there. And so you can see it's automatically done that shortened form of the citation since I already cited it in full once already. And if I cite it twice in a row, it'll handle that appropriately as well. There you go. So it shortens it even further, drops the title, since it is clear what I am referencing. Okay, so we can add one more just for fun, just to make sure we have a good bibliography at the end. That's the question. How did you get author, title, page instead of just author, page? So if you're referencing, so how it did the, this versus that. So that is just Zotero knowing that I'm citing the same thing twice in a row. And so it shortens it accordingly. So it'll always do, so in this citation style, in that full note style for Chicago, it'll always do a full citation the first time. The second and subsequent times that you cite it, it'll do a shortened citation like this, where it's just author, last name, short title, and then of course the page number that you inserted. If you then cite something twice in a row, it'll get even shorter. And so that's all defined in the Zotero style and all happens automatically. Now, if I insert a citation between these two, it should expand this one. Let me go ahead and do that, just so we can see. So let me pop a citation in right here and get my Zotero bar there. And what was one I did? Wenham. So this is a 2-volume work, so we'll do volume 1, page, say 58. So you can see, so it automatically updated it there. So now it's not two of the same thing in the row, so it goes ahead and adds the title in for additional clarity. And yes, I'm using the, for this example, I'm using the Chicago Manual Style 17th edition full note. Now, if I want to change that, if I wanted to do, use Turabian instead, I can just change that in my document preferences. And it'll update that. Although you probably can't, since Chicago and Turabian are basically the same thing, it won't look a whole lot different here. But if I do one of those IBID situations, let's pull in Williams again. You can see Turabian says IBID. I can switch it back to Chicago. And now the IBID is gone and it has the shortened author page number citation there. So at this point, let me go ahead and add a bibliography. So I can come in here, got my section for my bibliography here, and I have the button to add a bibliography. So I just click that. Should take a minute there as it pulls everything in. And so again, I'm going to have to do a little bit, it does the hanging indent for me, but apparently I need to do the spacing here. So let's see, where is that? That's under layout. Add 12 points of space after there, and now my bibliography looks pretty good. And since all my data is correct, my bibliographies and citations should all look good. Now, if I have cited something in here and like, oh, that piece of information isn't correct, I forgot an author on that article or something like that, all I need to do is I can go into Zotero. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that I helped Dr. Collins with this journal article. So let me put my name in here. Now, when I come back to Word, it's not going to have updated that just yet, but I can force a refresh. So I hit the refresh button there, and that just checks in with Zotero and checks to see if there have been any changes in my library and rebuilds my citations and bibliography. Erase my formatting, but added me in as an author there. And of course, does the same thing in my citation. So if you see any errors in your citation, so this is the other quick tip, a pitfall that people encounter. You can see when I select any of these citations, you see how it highlights in gray? It's not like, plain text. So this is tipping me off that there's some code underneath Word here that's not displayed. These are Microsoft Word fields. And so this is kind of telling me don't manually edit anything in here. So if I wanted to say, oh no, this should be page 35 to 36. Like it'll let me do that for now, but next time I refresh, it should. Oh, there we go. It just took a while. So it's bringing up this error saying, hey, I modified this citation that Zotero generated. Zotero is getting cranky that I touched its stuff. Now it will let me say, hey, yes, I really want to keep that citation, but that kind of unlinks that citation from Zotero then, and Zotero say, okay, that's on you now. I'm not going to touch it anymore. So if you have any further changes in your Zotero library, those updates wouldn't get passed through. So I'm going to say no, but then it's going to blow out all my changes and go back to what Zotero wants it to be. So if I need to edit any of the information in here, if it's something like a typo in the title or something like that, I'm going to want to go to my Zotero library and edit that information here, and then do a refresh in my Word document to get those changes brought in. If I do need to update the page number, I can click within the citation and click the Add Edit Citation button. We're going to get to that edit part, and then I can come in and say, okay, yeah, that's supposed to go to page 36. And then it'll update accordingly. And then that keeps Zotero happy. So any changes that you need to make to your citations or bibliography, do it through Zotero, don't do it manually. Now with that said, if there is some really tricky situation that you do need to make a manual edit, because Zotero is just not handling it correctly, it's a real edge case that Zotero doesn't really handle gracefully, just make a note of it, and then at the very end, you can use this button up here to unlink your citations. This will pull all the Zotero coding out of your Word document and just leave the text in place, and so that you can edit it. Now, warning, there is no going back at that point. You can't go back and reconnect your Zotero library and you do any updating of information that way. So what I would recommend is when you are ready to do that, save a separate copy of your document so that you have a backup of your original with the Zotero connections in place. And then on that copy, unlink the citations. So let me save what I have here. We'll do save as Zotero copy. And then I can unlink those citations. Removing field codes will prevent Zotero from updating citations in bibliography. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. Okay. So now you can see when I click down here, they're not turning gray. This is all just, text. Now Zotero doesn't know anything about this anymore. And I can edit these to my heart's content, and I'm not going to get Zotero upset. The other thing I can do, probably, so my bibliography, I think it may define a style for your bibliography. Yep, here we go. So if I open the styles pane, you can see that these have the style bibliography. I think that's something Zotero did and not something I did earlier. So I can modify this and set up my paragraph spacing. Nope, I don't want font. I want paragraph. Here we go. So now my bibliography has the right spacing there, and I should be all set.
I have a question. When you're putting in the footnotes, do the footnotes come in automatically with the font that you have your document set up to?
Yes. Yeah, Zotero will use whatever font you have Microsoft Word set up to use. So if you're, and so that would, I guess, be defined in this normal style right here. So if you, like, for example, I guess Microsoft Word these days, the default font is, I guess, Calibri, I think. But you may want to use something like Times New Roman or something like that for your paper. And so if you modify this normal style to use your preferred font, that should carry through your entire document. If you manually, you just started typing and you selected some text and changed your font, then that won't impact your footnotes. So that default font may be showing up there unless you edit the normal style in your document. So we have a question, is this doc specific or universal? Editing the styles should be document specific. I believe there is an advanced way to edit the default template for Microsoft Word if you do want to make that sort of change permanent for your computer, but otherwise you'll have to do that for each document that you open. The other thing I'll shout out is the Zotero documentation. So if you go to documentation here, has lots of good help information. There's videos in here. So if you have any questions about using Zotero, I mean, I'm happy to help to the extent I can, but you may also want to check here because this walks you through all the basics of using the program and other features that I didn't have time to cover today. So this can be a really useful resource. It's very well documented.